can see scope and I see a future. It could be in hospital, people who've had brain damage, for their families to communicate with them.
Yeah, there are many applications. It's a new field, cognitive neuroscience. The task is very difficult. Trying to understand the brain, it's a very complicated organ. I'm going to do like something small to benefit the world, and this is as much as I can do.
Hello, Pavlos, and welcome to Ph.D. Hard Talk. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks.
Good stuff. Could you please introduce your research in your own words?
Sure. So my name is Pavlos. Originally, I'm coming from Greece, but I'm located in Salzburg, Austria. So this is where I'm here doing my PhD. I'm doing my PhD in cognitive neuroscience. Mm-hmm. And for people who don't know, I guess cognitive neuroscience sounds really fancy, but it's actually different than classical neuroscience, right? So in neuroscience, people study the nervous system. They try to understand how it works in different animals, from insects to humans. And in cognitive neuroscience, what you're trying to do is you're trying to study the brain's cognitive capacities. And by cognitive abilities or capacities here, we mean functions. A function is, for instance, attention, right? So now you pay attention to what I'm saying. You're not thinking about what to eat for dinner. Or your nails. If there would be a knock on the door, then, for instance, it could be your friend Megan, then your attention would be directed to the door, and then you would stand up and you would go and answer. And then when you open the door, then you see Megan and you recognize her, which means that you need your attention to direct you to the door, and then you need your memory ability to see Megan and recognize her. Mm-hmm. Right, so you have all these different functions of the brain, all the different, memory, attention, language is another one. So you have all these things, and we're trying to study them as they are realized in the brain. And we use neuroscientific methods, and this is a bit the tricky part, because nowadays you have methods to study the brain while it performs all this nice stuff like memory, recognition, language, attention, all these kind of things. So it would be different from psychology, for instance, where the unit of analysis is behavior. So a psychologist would measure how fast you are at remembering something, or how good you are at encoding a specific information. Whereas a cognitive neuroscientist would look at your behavior, but also on top of that, he would try to understand what happens in the brain while this happens. We have different methods to do this. Nowadays, we have electroencephalography, for instance, where you put electrodes on the brain and you try to measure brain activity. We have magnetoencephalography, which is something that I'm working on, where you measure the magnetic fields that the brain is producing while someone is performing a cognitive task. And you have also fMRI, which is it's a very nice tool where actually you can take snapshots, like pictures of the brain, while you performing a cognitive task, right? Like you're retrieving the face of your friend, or something like that. So this is the field that I'm working on.
Okay, I'm loving it already, but I have to ask. You've explained that it's unlike psychology when it comes to cognitive behaviors. So in terms of cognitive, from the mental state, in terms of your analysis, what does it actually mean in your research? How do you define it?
Mm-hmm. Usually what you do is you try to, for instance, if you study memory, right? Mm-hmm. What you do is you have a task where someone is learning something, mm-hmm. and you try to you put the electrodes on someone's head, and then you try to measure the brain activity while they're memorizing or while they try to retrieve. Mm-hmm. And you find different activations. So you find different, patterns of the different regions of the brain being activated. For instance, when you try to recall visual information compared to an auditory information. So you're doing different tasks depending on which kind of function you want to measure. Mm-hmm. Is this clear?
Yes. So now I'm thinking, how does your research benefit, let's say, we'll take it back to Greece, the community in Greece, or are you focusing on Austria? How is it going to benefit the community?
So the specific topic of my PhD is I'm doing sleep research, right? But these are in cognitive neuroscience. Mm-hmm. So I try to explain what cognitive neuroscience is. Regarding the effects, the results, how it's going to impact society, let's say. It's a basic research project, which means that our findings are not necessarily applicable into the short what happens nowadays in cognitive neuroscience is that we have all these fancy methods that I described before. Open up they used to say that the brain is a black box, and now we start actually opening it up. And this is what the small contribution is, that if we manage to understand how the brain works, how you process information, how you consolidate memories, in what kind of form you have this information stored in your brain, then that would be beneficial in many different ways, and dangerous to some extent, but this is a different discussion. But this is in general, as a field, what the contribution is back to society. It's not something that it's in many cases readily applied to society. Regarding my PhD in sleep, I currently had a publication on how different cultures sleep. We try to figure out whether there are different sleep patterns or activity patterns in different cultures. And I think this is the research that you are more familiar with, where we gave actigraphs to different cultures. So we have data from Ukraine, Cuba, Austria, and Germany. And actigraphs are simple smartwatches, right? So you can use motion with actigraphy. So you can measure motion, and you can get an index about approximately how when someone goes to bed or wakes up. And then you have a variable. You can index how many hours or how much someone sleeps, or that happens. And then you can compare this in a cultural level to see whether there are differences in terms of as I said, physical activity patterns during the day, like count steps or sleep habits.
Okay, so in terms of, I understand what you're saying, but I'm trying to understand, okay, if we've got, let's say currently there are a lot of people who can't sleep at night, and they're on the internet listening to is it whales on YouTube? They listen to mountains and trees and all of this stuff. It's fascinating, and it is an industry now. They're making a lot of money out of these little videos or raindrops or what have you. So I'm trying to see in terms of how does your research then enable that person from a village, right, who has no access to the internet to listen to these fancy things. And back in the day we had the CDs, didn't we? And some people still use CDs because they don't have access to technology. It is a reality. So I'm trying to see as to how your research can then touch those people, because they need the help as well, because they're going through the struggle. Or am I wrong in seeing their struggle?
Sure. I mean, I would have really difficult time arguing for a specific benefit to this kind of people, of my research, at least at this stage, which is for me totally fine. I mean, as I said, it's a basic, I'm doing basic science, so I'm trying to contribute as much as I can to understanding of the brain. Now, and also sleep and all this phenomena that we've talked about. Now, if someone can take it afterwards and extend the findings and try to come up with the technology or an intervention that might be helpful for people in minorities, or someone who can actually benefit from my research, then that would be wonderful. But I would, since it's a very basic fundamental research, I would have troubles understanding how they would at this point make use of it.
Okay, so in terms of passion then, I mean, I'm thinking to myself, what would make you want to do this research? What is the passion behind it?
I think I really I like this question because and it's I'm going to give you a very funny answer. I think when I was in my master's like 2 years ago, I wanted to do clinical research. I want to do sleep and something with clinical populations because I want to help. It was really important for me because this is how I could actually keep myself motivated and passionate. I have someone that I want to help, so I'm going to do research in order to help them. Nowadays, things have changed.
Okay.
At this point of in my life and my PhD, I don't feel the need to have a clinical project or having a project or do applied research where I can see the effects of my research. At this stage of my PhD, I have only one objective, which gives me passion and motivation. My passion is to understand. I don't feel at this point the need to give back, because I don't feel that it's time for me to do so. I think what I'm focusing now, and keeps me, actually, it's working very nicely. I'm very motivated and passionate. And this is a very funny thing, that the more time I spend in PhD, the more motivated and passionate I become, because I understand more. So my approach is, hey, listen, I have to understand first as much as I can, get a grasp of the methods, which are very complicated in cognitive neuroscience, get an understanding of the brain, and then I'm going to come up with I'm going to have an impact, but I'm not rushing it. I think that I find this very common, actually. You want to do research that has an impact, and as an individual, you want to have an impact, which makes sense. I totally understand this. I want to do this as well, but I realize that it's very difficult, and I think we need to be a bit more pragmatic regarding the impact we want to have. The impact you're going to have, I'm going to have, I can talk about myself, is it's small. It's not something, probably it's not going to be something, amazing, or we're not going to have like a groundbreaking like discovery, most likely. I'm going to do like something small to benefit the world, and this is as much as I can do.
Okay, I find your response very, very unique and peculiar. Now, I want to go back to, I wanted to help. Currently, my passion has changed. What transpired between your journey from your master's to sending your proposal to you then starting, that's changed your mindset?
I think the past years I've studied a lot. I understand more, and I managed to sit, to listen to a talk which is not related to my topic. It's related to brain still, but it's not necessarily directly related to my research, and feel excited and feel that, hey, I understand what this guy is talking about. I want to hear more. Before, in my master's, this wasn't the case. During my master's, you would have this weekly colloquium, we called it, these weekly visits from researchers from abroad, which they would give, who they would give a talk about, cognitive neuroscience, and then in 10 or 15 minutes, I would zone out. But this was not because I was lazy or because I was like, it was simply because I couldn't understand that much.
Right.
So now this has changed. Now I can understand so much more, and I feel I can follow the story. I can listen to the, I'm watching a movie whilst, I'm following the story when someone is giving a presentation, because I understand, not fully, but to a large extent, the methods that they are. I mean, I have so much things to learn still, but it's getting better. I can follow the story, and this keeps me motivated. So this is the state of mind I'm currently. I'm not saying that this is not going to change. I mean, at some point I would like to do to have a project, or to come up with a device or a tool that will help people sleep, or cognition, or all of this. But I just feel that I shouldn't concern that much with it right now. I mean, during my PhD, I'm trying to contribute a bit to the literature.
Yes.
Firstly, which is my job. I'm getting paid for it. But at the same time, I'm trying to make myself a good thinker. Be critical, having a good understanding of the literature, and then maybe the impact is even bigger at the end of the day.
Okay, that is amazing, and I like your truth in terms of how you've had an opportunity to reflect. So thank you for sharing that, because I find that, when you do speak to your peers, some of them, they really want to change the world, and it's like, we're still getting our foundation. We have to build the house, and it's brick by brick. You can't run. Take your time, have that understanding and, the knowledge, and then you can do a lot more, because then you have the basis properly. So I do understand what it is that you're saying. So I guess in terms of, you've mentioned there that you are getting paid whilst you're doing your PhD. So could you take us in terms of through, in the sense of somebody who's thinking, okay, I do want to do a PhD, and I've heard that when you're a PhD student or researcher, you tend to be broke. What advice would you give them?
Again, maybe a peculiar answer. I've started seeing science to some extent as an art. And if this is, I mean, I totally think that science has lots of artistic components in it. You have to be creative. You have to know what has been done before, so you can come up with new ideas. You have to apply for getting funding for doing something, right? So it's very similar to what actually artists are doing. They need to apply for. They have, if you are a screenwriter, then you write your script, and then you go somewhere, and then you try to get money to do your film. It's very similar to this kind of job. So I think that when people come in science, they don't know this, and which is a bit. I didn't know that as well, but it is how it is. You probably you will get broke at some point because you're doing art. You need to keep pushing. You need to find funding, come up with ideas. All these artists are going through very similar process. Advice, what would be the advice? Try to, I don't know, try to be active. Try to communicate a lot your research, because maybe you have amazing findings, but you don't communicate them enough. Try to understand the grant writing protocol and how the procedure, how it is to get funded, and hope for the best. I don't know.
Okay, I'm laughing, but this is a serious issue, I guess, and you've addressed it there, that you didn't know, but now that you know what to follow in terms of adhering to the stipulations, in terms of you need to get funding for A, B, C, D to work, etc. So in terms of publications, then, what's your viewpoint? Because I've had conversations whereby some students who've since graduated, they are unhappy with the fact that for them to be a professor, they have to publish constantly, and they say it's unfair and it is unrighteous for a university to expect you to get funding, publish, teach, mark, and do amazing in all these 4 areas. Maybe there are more, but those are the 4 key areas that I've heard from previous colleagues that I've spoken to.
Yeah, it's for sure far from ideal, right?
I have no idea. I haven't done it yet.
Yeah, but wait, you're also doing your PhD.
Yeah, I am, but I haven't published yet, so I have no idea.
Yeah, okay. See, yeah, it's the publishing system is not ideal. I mean, you also have to pay for publishing your findings. If you have something, if you found something amazing and you want to publish it high, let's say, then you have to pay also really a lot of money. Oh boy, that's a very difficult problem, which I'm not sure how I can contribute there. Maybe what I can say, which I've talked to some people and I've shared this idea and it helped them to some extent, is that we should, as PhD students, stop feeling that someone is pushing us to publish necessarily, which it is the case, but we can come up with a new narrative which could help us go through, which goes like, hey, I'm not pushed to publish. I am pushed to share my science, so my art based on my previous idea, where I'm excited to show people what I've done. Not to get credit for it, not to get just to share what I've been doing. So and this is the narrative also I'm saying to myself. I'm not pressured to publish necessarily. I'm excited to share my research. So I know many PhD people who don't go to conferences, for instance. I mean, also there is a money problem there, but they feel reluctant to communicate the science. They feel like, I don't know, shy or introverted, or that this is too much for them. But it's a key component of science. It's exactly like art. It's like, imagine that you're an amazing screenwriter. You have something, you're doing amazing. You paint an amazing painting, and then you lock it in a room and you don't feel like sharing it that much. I think this is a wrong approach. You need to feel excited of sharing your work. So, and then all this publication rush, this idea goes a bit away. I'm not saying that it's not there. I'm not there is a, you need to it's a competitive field for sure, but I think there are clever ways to go a bit to go a bit around.
Okay, thank you so much for your response. I love how you responded, but I guess what I was trying to get to is, how do you then you deal with brains, configure your brain to say, okay, I know I have to publish, it's part of my contract, right? I still have to teach. I have to mentor and guide maybe 15 students. How do you get the brain in this phase here when you're then talking to people to say it has to be one and be in a positive light? How does one work on that? Because I hear what you're saying, but the reality is, based on conversations that I've had, a good number is unhappy and they want to leave the world of academia. They want to go and work in industry, and they are looking for jobs because they feel like it's too much pressure for you to write a journal, to get, to have reviewer 1 and 2 come back with their comments and your mental health. And then you have to go out there and perform for the students, whether online or in person. They feel like it's a lot of pressure. So how do they help their brains to do better? I guess that's the question.
They sleep a lot. Yeah, it's a challenge. And you need to find ways to get better at it. I mean, I was struggling a lot as well with task management, project management. I mean, I didn't know all these kind of things. Also, how to mentor, how to be a good supervisor for thesis and stuff like that. So you pick up skills on the go, and it's frustrating. It's especially in my field, you always need to challenge yourself with new methods, with new tools. Every day is a new day. It's frustrating. And it has, but this is what I've experienced so far. Right, I'm now on my third. I'm getting into my third year.
Congratulations.
Yes. So at the beginning, it was really, really difficult. First 2 years were a lot of stress, but now it's getting better. Work, and this is the funny thing, that work increases, but mental health is much better, because you know that you can cope. You know that you will find a way. You are more confident. Yeah, someone needs to push a lot with their. You need to find your weaknesses. If your weaknesses is in task management, project management, time, how do you organize your time? What is your weak points in terms of, okay, am I good with data analysis? How is my programming, depending what you're doing? How is my literature? You need to find what is your weaknesses, and you need to invest a lot of time in getting better. There is no easy way to do that, right? Yeah, I don't know if this answers to you. I mean, there is no easy answer to this question, right? I mean, I can tell you what worked for me, right?
Yeah.
This is I wasn't really good with time management. I wasn't really good with task management. It gets much better, right? You find some tools. I mean, there's tons of tools online. You can do your research and find ways to organize your time. But I think you need to want to get better.
Of course.
And if you don't, then you will struggle, for sure.
No, I think, what you've said is your honest truth. At the end of the day, in terms of how we deal with tasks, it tends to be different. And, I respect the way you fashioned your answer, because it's not one fits all, unfortunately, because we're all different. As you know, with the brain, you know that people receive or react differently at different times. And from a psychological standpoint, where I come from, we tend to edit ourselves, don't we? How to behave, how to talk, how to sit, because we're in a different environment. So, your answer is spot on.
Get to know yourself, know your strengths and the weaknesses. And you said before that many people opt to leave academia. But what I've noticed is that you can be a scientist in many different ways. There are some people in science who are good with communication. I guess you guys are like this, right? This is why you started the channel. You want to communicate with people. You want to communicate your research. There are other people who are more like, let's say, personality-wise, more introverts. They would like to spend more time in the lab, doing more technical work, which is fine. So everyone needs to find what kind of scientist do they want to be. There is no ideal case. I mean, someone says that, yeah, these guys are really good with, communication, networking, giving presentations, but they're not really strong methodologically. So be it. Then there are other people who are good methodological. This is why you would collaborate with these people. I mean, sometimes you will get obsessed with being, the perfect scientist, or the guy who does everything, which is not the case. I mean, science is all about collaboration. find your who you are, which this is why I love PhD, because no matter if you end up in academia or not, I think you go through this introspection, this self-analysis to some extent, and you get to know yourself better, because it's a very challenging thing to do a PhD. So eventually you get to know yourself better, and this is going to be helpful no matter if you end up in academia or not.
Okay, thank you very much. So in terms of future then, where do you see yourself? What are you thinking to do?
So as I've shared a bit about my journey, I started with the idea that I want to do clinical research and sleep. That would be wonderful, because then I could also see the results of my research. Nowadays, I'm walking on the street and I'm like, yeah, what's going to happen after PhD? And I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll do some clinical work and some research at the same time, so that if the one doesn't work, then the other works and stuff like that. And the last talk I had with myself, I was like, no, this is actually coming from insecurity. I like basic research. I like giving me, a question and coming up with an answer. I like my graphs. I like all of it. So I think this clinical part that comes again and again, it's nothing more than a very very expected insecurity that comes with all the uncertainty with a PhD. But if you ask me, I would at this point of my life, as I said, maybe it changes in 2 years, maybe I get sick and tired of it. How can I know? But at this time in my life, what day is it? It's Saturday. And I would tell you that at this stage, I like what I'm doing. I like the people I work with, which is extremely important, and I like the work I'm doing. I'm looking at the graph and I'm trying to understand it. And that's it for now. Let's see how the world continues. But so to answer your question, at this stage, I will tell you that I would like to stay in academia. I will try to push and try to get better and try to enjoy as much as I can, which is the first priority. And I will check with myself now and then and see if this is still meaningful to me. If this is the way that I want to contribute to society through writing papers or through communicating science, or I can do so many different things afterwards. It's not. I'm just seeing PhD as everything in life, right? As a mean to go somewhere else.
Okay, I like that. So in terms of somebody who's thinking, should I get a scholarship or should I self-fund? What's your advice?
I don't think that you should self-fund. You should get really good at what you're doing, for starters, like pre-PhD level. I mean, get a good understanding of what you want to do to apply for. And try to get funding. I think I'm coming from Greece, which is not the best. Financially is not the best country in Europe. But I've done a lot of volunteer work throughout my studies. During bachelor's, I was always doing voluntary stuff, which I don't regret. But at some point, I think that it's very important where you have financially you're kind of secure, so that you have time to think about the science you want to do.
Okay, no, that's quite interesting. And then in terms of general advice, then when you look at your academic journey from your bachelor's all the way to where you are now, what advice do you have for somebody who's just finished college or sixth form? I don't know what other names they are there, but when they've just finished and they're making that decision to say, I do want to go to university, but I don't know if I want to stop off at my master's, or if I want to go to, to do my MPhil, or to do a PhD. I don't know what to do, but I know that I do want to stay in education. What advice do you have?
Yeah, I think there are two approaches, right? There are these people who know exactly what they want to do. So you can back engineer, right? If you want to become, I don't know, a police officer, then you can back engineer to what exactly I need to become that. I think these are not too many people. It's nice when you are this kind of person, and life is getting much simpler then. I think most of us, because I would put myself into this category as well, they figuring out what they like as they grow up. And I think it's quite brutal now what happens with this current educational system, where you have young people and you force them to make life choices which apparently they have no idea what they want to do in life. So if you know what you want to do, back and do like a very good analysis of what needs to be done, and then back engineer so that you get all the qualifications you need. if you don't know, which is the most difficult part, I guess, if you don't know and you want still to keep in education, I would say follow your gut, follow your instincts, and try to be in a place where you're surrounded by nice people, and you feel like you're doing something meaningful. And if you do that, then most likely something nice is going to pop up. Maybe I can be a bit more brutal here and say, Pavlos, nice, you're very romantic, yeah, follow your dream. But this is you need to be also at the same time a bit pragmatic, right? So if you want to follow a career which is very difficult, for instance, I don't know, something in the arts maybe, which it's not very easy to have a career nowadays. I mean, you need to sacrifice a lot. Then you need to see whether you can be pragmatic or not, and whether you're actually willing to make the sacrifices needed in order to achieve your goal. And I think this is also what everything boils down to, right? Whether you're ready to, what are you willing to sacrifice? I mean, I can tell you, like in research, you have to sacrifice a lot. I mean, I'm not around my family. Personal life is really difficult when you're in research and you know that you're going to move. I mean, this is it's a classical story.
Yeah. I'm laughing because I know.
Yeah.
It's a very lonely road.
Yeah, what it needs to be sacrificed, and whether you are willing to do that. That's pretty much it.
Okay, excellent. So I have one more question to ask you, which is, why come on PhD Hard Talk?
First of all, it's a good opportunity for me to start sharing my thoughts about academia, PhD, which I think I have a funny journey. I mean, my parents never believed that I'm going to make it into university and stuff like that. So it's I'm not going into this narrative, but it's a nice opportunity. I mean, I like your initiative to have people in academia open up. Which I think that we need more of it. We shouldn't be afraid of truth, and I'm not also afraid of truth to talk about the difficulties of the job. I mean, for me, it seems to be working very nicely so far. So I don't have lots of drama to share. I mean, I'm working with amazing people. I lead a meaningful life so far. I don't know how things are going. You can ask again next year. It's about sharing. It's about having an opportunity to talk about the things you are passionate about and you find meaningful.
Excellent. So I know that you've got a few things to share on a slide, what we talked about. So would you like to get that up, please, and then we can crack on?
Yes, I mean, you asked me at the beginning what I do for PhD, and I told you I'm doing a PhD in cognitive neuroscience. And as I said, this is not very familiar to many people. They don't understand the cognitive part. I mean, they have a pretty good understanding of neuroscience, but the cognitive part is it becomes very blurry. But for us as well, I mean, cognition is very difficult to define also as a scientist. But actually, this is, my PhD is in cognitive neuroscience, but I'm working in a sleep and consciousness laboratory. So we try to understand consciousness. And one way to do this is by using sleep, actually, because sleep is an amazing phenomenon where you are in an altered state of consciousness. So you go through very many different stages, right? So you're awake, and then you're a bit sleepy, and then you are very into deep sleep, and then you start something very peculiar starts happening. You start seeing very weird images popping up, very different scenarios, and then you at some point you wake up. Yeah. So sleep is a nice. It gives you a nice opportunity to study consciousness because it changes through the night. I'm trying to understand how the brain helps, how sleep helps your brain learning. So I'm working on a very fashionable theory, which is called predictive coding, which simply, I mean, it's quite complicated to explain, but very roughly it tells you that the brain is a statistics machine. Is a machine that gets input, and it learns the statistics of the input it gets. And I can give you an example, right? So I can share a bit my slides.
While you're sharing your slide, a lot of people have this smart watches, isn't it, which you've touched on previously, and it tells you when you've gone into deep sleep and when you're still in light sleep, and then when you were back to deep sleep during the night, whether you sleep 5 hours, 3 hours, etc. So in terms of your research, is your focal point focused on the deep sleep to understand the deep sleep, or do you look at the light sleeps as well when people are dreaming and they're subconscious? Is it subconscious or whatever the word is? I'll find a dictionary later.
Yeah, it's everything is interesting. We study the brain as it transitions from wakefulness to lighter sleep stages and deep sleep stages, as well as what happens during the so-called REM, the rapid eye movement stage, where your eyes are moving like under the eyelid very fast, and you are dreaming in this kind of stage. So everything is important. So one question I'm asking during PhD, I'm asking a lot of questions. I'm not going to go too much into detail, but one of them is to what extent can you process the information that it's in the environment while you are unconscious?
Okay.
So imagine this scenario. Imagine, you know that when you sleep and you hear a sound, then the information, there's an air pressure hits your ears and then goes into your brain, and it can wake you up if it's too loud. So we know that to some extent you can process the information. The question is, to what extent? Can you figure out whether it's your mom or your dad shouting something at you? Could you realize in my research whether something is predicted or expected or not expected? So for instance, imagine you are kissing your boyfriend goodnight. This is a classical example I give, and then in the middle of the night you hear a female voice next to you. Yeah. Would your brain wake you up because there was a sound next to you simply? Or would your brain wake you up because, hey, that was not expected, you should wake up? So to what level to what extent can your brain actually process the information?
Okay.
It all boils down to expectations. And in the literature, we know a lot that the expectations you have for influence the way you see the world. And I'm going to make it a bit more clear. So here I have an audio file with some gibberish. So you will hear a computerized voice saying nothing. Okay, let's try this one. Okay, it doesn't make any sense. The second audio file I have, it's again a computerized voice, but it says the word brainstorm. So here in this file, I have the word brainstorm. Okay, one more time.
Okay.
Awesome. And here I have another audio file which contains the word green needle. It's again the computerized voice, but it says the word green needle. Okay, one more time. Green needle.
Okay.
Awesome. Cool. Now, I know that works for many people, but the idea here is that we have these three audio files, right? Now, what is very interesting is that these audio files are physically exactly the same. So they contain exactly the same physical information. Did you hear all three of them or the two of them?
So I had the brainstorm and the green needle very well. Okay. Gibberish, I don't know what you were saying. Okay. So maybe it was gibberish.
You're going to love this. You're going to love this. So all this, I just copied and pasted the audio file. The audio files are exactly the same. They have nothing different. There is no audio file containing the word brainstorm. There is no audio file containing the word green needle. They are physically the same.
Okay.
What is different is your expectation of what you're going to hear. So I told you that you should expect brainstorm, and brainstorm is what you heard. I told you that green needle is what you're going to hear, and green needle is what you've heard. So we know that your expectation, your mere expectation, influences your perception. So influences the way you see information. Right? And we go back to my predictive coding framework, which sounds very fancy, but it's exactly this. It's the fact that you have expectations, and these expectations influence how information is processed. And here it can be a bit dry. Okay, like expectations influence the way I perceive auditory signals. Okay, what's so interesting about it? But you need to understand that this prediction, this expectation business, it goes into every kind of domain in your life. It goes from the state of your inner organs, how my stomach should be, like the brain asks this question, right? And if there is something, then there is a violation of the expectation. Hey, something is not expected. Something is not as expected. And you can go into the social domain. So, you date someone, and then you know that they are from a specific country, and then you expect already a specific behavior if you already had some information beforehand. So expectations go from a very low level, like cells, auditory signal, like brain, to very high level, like social stuff. So this is the framework I'm working with. It's argued that it's a fundamental way that the brain is functioning, and we try to understand more about it. And I'm using sleep to ask the following question: to what extent is this predictive coding working during you being unconscious? Or to turn the question around, to what extent do you need consciousness in order to perform predictive coding? And I'm going back to the example I gave you before, where you sleep with, you kiss your boyfriend goodnight, and then you hear a female voice in the middle of the night. Can your brain detect that there is a mismatch of what you expect and what is violated? So this is the first research question I'm working on. Unfortunately, due to COVID, it was really difficult to collect brain data, because I'm working with brain data here. But this is why I did also the actigraphy and some questionnaire studies. But this is what I'm actually currently working on. I'm trying to collect more data and do more analysis. And hopefully, like, I'm going to be like next year, I'm going to be done with it and progress to the next question, which is very similar, but a bit different. It asks not what happens during sleep, but what is the role of sleep in your ability to form expectations when you are awake? Because you go through life and you collect data, right? Different things happen, and you need to be able to understand on the background the patterns that happens. We can take this very philosophically. We can talk about life being a mixture between a battle between order and chaos, for instance. Understand what information is random, what is random in the world, and what is structure, what has some pattern in it, right? For example, when you walk, every step you make, you have a very good, you expect that you're going to hit a solid surface. So what enables you to walk? It's not just you having legs and the floor being there, but also it's your expectation that I can do this, right? So there is a repetition, there is information there is the floor, which is very reliable. Sometimes it's not so easy. Sometimes it's 80. If you go into interpersonal relationships, sometimes things can get very tricky. You date someone and then they do something very weird, like once, and you don't pay attention because it was once. Yeah, sorry for the vivid examples.
No, I was just going to say, in terms of understanding, it sounds as if psychology plays a big part in terms of how the brain does actually behave, be it stereotype or be actual reality and perception, and the inbuilt reality that you have in your brain, in your sleep, and in your actual day-to-day delivery in terms of your tasks, be it drinking coffee or behaviors, etc. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. There is an interconnection between of course, sleep, behavior, and perception. I mean, behavior is actually, we visualize this as a circle. You perceive, you act. You perceive, you act. It's the perception action loop. I think I gave you a rough idea of the theories. I mean, a very, very very plain, I think, way. Okay.
We're back.
Now you can. Hey. There are many applications. As the field, it's a new field, cognitive neuroscience. The task is very difficult. Trying to understand the brain, it's a very complicating organ. The methods we have are not so easy, and the questions we ask are very profound. How do you store information? Like, where is your memory center in the brain? And it's very, very
on the left, just there. I'm joking.
So this is you could apply all this knowledge to a lot of new technological advances that they are going to come up. My job is to understand as much as I can. Then at some point hopefully I'm going to contribute a lot.
No, I genuinely think it's amazing, because I'm thinking Japan currently, they're leading with AI, aren't they? So your research, whether you're saying I'm still understanding, I can see scope and I see future. It could be in hospital, people who've had brain damage. you know, for their families to communicate with them, to see that they are reacting, whether they've been in a coma for a month or 2 months. I can see scope, and I see, you know, growth and development. So that's why I'm very excited, you know,
Yeah.
in terms of what you're talking about. And I hope people at home will be excited as much as I am, because I think this is great.
Why, to be honest, I also find my field very interesting, and this is why I'm passionate about it, and I love talking about it.
Yeah.
Actually, you said before that about coma patients. I mean, in my laboratory, we do some research with coma patients, and we try to understand whether they have like they follow a sleep-wake cycle. We try to understand more. Also, this is what you said about them communicating to the relatives, or whether you can have a variable which gives you a good indication that you can predict whether they're going to come back or not. Which is very important. Maybe something that it would be also very exciting and interesting to you. In my research, I use different. Let's say I put people in sleep and I measure the brain activity, and at the same time, I'm using some auditory signals in order to do my manipulations, right?
Yeah.
Like something expected, something not expected, and I'm working with that. I'm using a very fancy method, which I will try to although fancy, I will try to explain very simply. It's called decoding, which is simply what you do is imagine that you show someone a cat on the computer screen, and then you record the brain activity. And imagine you have lots of electrodes which give you an oscillation it gives you, let's say, brain activity. Let's put it that way, like small activity.
Yeah.
Now, what you can do is you can train an algorithm in the following way. You can tell him, hey, algorithm, this is how Noma's brain looks like when she sees a cat. This is how her brain looks like when she sees a dog. And then the algorithm, although in the naked eye you don't see any difference, you see just lines moving up and down, the algorithm can go there and can pick up the regularities, the information there is in this brain signal, and he can learn pretty well to tell me when you see a cat and when you see a dog, which is the closest you can get to mind reading, actually. So we are currently in science at this stage where we can do decoding. I can teach a classifier, an algorithm, to tell me what is happening in your brain, and then what I can do later is I could only give him brain signal. I can also give him a snapshot of your brain and ask him, does Noma see a cat or a dog? And then he comes up with an answer, and it's the correct, most likely is the correct answer. So these are the methods I'm working on, which are quite reliable and pretty robust, actually.
Okay, so may I just say one thing? You say you don't want to change the world, but you are changing the world, because that is impeccable.
Sure, but my argument is that I shouldn't want to change. How can I put this? It's not the primary goal of mine.
Yeah,
if it comes as a byproduct, then it's lovely. But come on, it would be so depressing if I had this pressure, that I want to change the world. I want to change the world. Well, I don't. I just want to have fun, and I just want to enjoy as much as possible. Of course, make a contribution. But I try not to get overwhelmed with it. I'm just trying to be excited and have fun. And I'm pretty sure that if you do that, then anything you end up doing, it doesn't really matter. If you go out of science, if you do something very simple in your life, then you're going to have an impact.
Wow, that is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. And I guess in summary, right, what wise words do you have to share with the audience at home? So remember, some of them, they're not in research. This is entertainment for them. They're at home thinking, I need to watch something. And then others are looking to collaborate with you because they think your research is amazing. And then others are just thinking, I need a new idea because I need to publish. The deadline's around the corner. So what advice do you have for them?
It's cliche, but get connected with who you are. Try to ask yourself tough questions about what you like, what you don't like. Be connected with yourself. And something that I'm flirting with this idea nowadays, don't be afraid of truth. I don't know if you have experienced this, but at some point in Ph.D, you have to analyze data. And when you analyze data, then things can go right or things can go wrong. And I don't know if you had this experience where you tend to postpone the analysis a bit, because on the background, you are afraid of what's going to happen. Maybe you don't find anything. Maybe you spent, I don't know, 7 or 9 months working on something that it's not that it's not meaningful, but there is nothing there in terms of data analysis.
Yeah.
And if this is the case, then that should be fine. So don't be afraid of finding nothing. I think we should, especially in science, be more appreciating of finding nothing, because it's very informative. And this goes in any kind of life aspect, right? Is if it's in relationships, if it's I don't know, a specific a career you want to follow. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to figure out the truth. If it's not working, then it's not working, and it's good, and then you go further.
Okay. Thank you very much for your wise words. And I guess, in terms of learnings for today, be honest with thyself, trust yourself, and be ready to know that you can't change the world through science. Sometimes you have to be patient to find the niche market that will enable you to make that change. But change, it shouldn't be the main driver of your research. It should be the added bonus. Is that right?
That sounds pretty good.
Excellent. So thank you again. I will call you Dr. Pavlos Topalidis. And I know I've said that wrong, but don't correct me.
That's wonderful. I loved it.
But thank you again for your time. Project Examination to the World. And if you want to know more about the brain, sleep issues, good, bad, ugly, he's your man. And if you do want to collaborate, his details will be at the bottom in terms of his details. So thank you again for joining us today on our chat.
Thanks a lot.